Every empire dies in 7 stages. America just entered stage 5. Berlin, November 1923. A man named Heinrich stands at a bakery counter on Friedrichstrasse and he counts. He counts slowly, the way a man counts when he already knows the number is wrong. He has 200 billion marks in his coat pocket, a figure that would have made his grandfather weep with joy. It buys 1 loaf of bread. Yesterday, it bought 1.5. Tomorrow, it may buy nothing at all. He pays. He takes the bread. He doesn't run. Running would imply somewhere to go. 3 streets away, a man named Franz is not counting. He hasn't thought about marks in months. Franz has gold. Not paper certificates promising gold, not a bank account denominated in marks, physical gold coins, gold mark pieces and a handful of Swiss francs in a locked drawer, acquired quietly and without ceremony between 1920 and 1921, when the first cracks in the Reichsmark appeared and most Germans told themselves it would pass. Franz also owns 2 apartment buildings in Mitte, whose tenants pay rent, repriced monthly in gold terms because Franz had learned from an older cousin who had watched the Russian ruble collapse in 1917 that paper rents in a debasing currency are a slow form of charity. And Franz owns a 40% stake in a grain distribution business operating in Brandenburg. Food moves. Food always moves. People pay for food in whatever medium of exchange still functions. When the Rentenmark stabilized Germany in late 1923, Heinrich had nothing. His savings, 22 years of careful deposits, had been reduced to a mathematical joke. Franz had not only preserved his position, he had spent the previous 18 months buying distressed assets from men like Heinrich at fractions of their real value, because the chaos that destroyed Heinrich had handed Franz a price list. Heinrich was not stupid, he was not careless, he was simply reading a different document than Franz. Heinrich was reading the official government announcements, which said stability was coming. Franz was reading a 500-year record of what happens when governments print their way out of a problem they created. That record had one conclusion. It was never different, and it named the same 5 assets every time. Those 5 assets are hard commodities, gold and silver, income-producing real estate, essential business ownership, foreign currency diversification, and productive land and food systems. Before we go further, understand what this is. This is not financial advice. This is forensic history, an examination of what the record actually shows, stripped of ideology and sentiment. The pattern doesn't care about your politics. It doesn't care about your nation. It has no loyalty and no mercy. It simply repeats. And if you watch this video and still think these patterns don't apply to the present moment, hold that thought until the end, because the evidence has a way of speaking for itself. Now, why these 5 specific assets? Why not stocks, bonds, cryptocurrency, or any of the 1,000 instruments modern finance has invented? The answer is structural, not ideological. In every collapse studied across 500 years of monetary history, paper-denominated assets, bonds, savings accounts, pension funds, equities priced in the collapsing currency, lose value at the speed of the currency itself. They are promises, and the one thing every collapsing system shares is the discovery that their promises were hollow. The 5 assets that survive are not promises, they are things. They produce income independent of a central bank's credibility. They exist in physical reality, and critically, they are scarce in ways that cannot be legislated away. This is pattern recognition, not strategy. The distinction matters. Strategy implies a plan crafted in the present. Pattern recognition is reading what has already been written, hundreds of times in the blood of currencies that no longer exist. Begin with gold and silver, the oldest financial survival instrument in recorded human civilization. The survival record here is not merely impressive, it is unbroken across 2,700 years of monetary history. Return to Weimar Germany because it is the most precisely documented hyperinflation in modern economic literature. In January 1921, $1 bought 64 marks. By November 1923, that same dollar bought 4.2 trillion marks. The price of a single loaf of bread moved from 250 marks to 200 billion marks in roughly 24 months. Paper savings held by German citizens were not damaged, they were annihilated. But those holding physical gold saw their purchasing power not only preserved, but dramatically expanded in real terms. A gold coin worth 20 marks in 1919 commanded the equivalent of tens of millions of marks by late 1923. The Rothschild family, already deep holders of gold across their European network, emerged from the Weimar period with their financial architecture largely intact. Nathan Rothschild's reported dictum from the Napoleonic panic a century earlier, "Buy when there is blood in the streets," was not bravado, it was a gold-backed operating principle. The same pattern holds in Zimbabwe. Between 2007 and 2009, the Zimbabwe dollar underwent one of the most catastrophic debasements in recorded history, a peak inflation rate estimated by the Cato Institute at 89.7 sextillion% per month in November 2008. The government printed $100 trillion notes that couldn't buy a bus fare, but Zimbabweans who held gold, through Rand refinery coins, South African Krugerrands, or small physical bars, found themselves operating in a parallel economy entirely insulated from the carnage. In Lebanon, after 2019, the Lebanese pound lost more than 90% of its dollar value in 3 years, and gold traded informally in Beirut's Hamra gold souk became one of the only stable stores of exchange in the country. Lebanese merchant families with multi-generational bullion holdings did not merely survive the collapse, they became the de facto creditors to those who did not. The structural reason gold survives is ancient and simple: it cannot be printed. Every collapse in this record is ultimately a story of a government printing its way out of a problem they created. Gold sits entirely outside that mechanism. Verdict: in 5 centuries of monetary failure, gold has never gone to zero, not once. Move now to income-producing real estate, and the historical record shifts from preservation to active advantage. Real estate that generates rental income occupies a unique position in collapse economics. It produces revenue denominated in whatever currency survives the transition, and it houses human beings who require shelter, regardless of what the central bank is doing. The anchor case here is Argentina, because Argentina has now survived 5 major debt crises since 1982, making it the most stress-tested laboratory of collapse economics in the modern era. In the 2001 crisis, residential real estate in Buenos Aires declined approximately 30 to 40% in dollar terms, significant but survivable. More critically, landlords collecting peso rents saw those rents repriced rapidly in dollar terms as the informal economy dollarized itself. By 2004, Buenos Aires real estate had become one of the most aggressively sought assets by foreign investors because the crash had created a floor. Those who owned through the crisis and did not panic sell recovered fully within 5 years. Those who sold in December 2001 locked in losses that compounded with each month of recovery they missed. The Great Depression offers a parallel structure. Between 1929 and 1933, U.S. real estate values fell roughly 25 to 30% nationally, severe but again survivable for those with no leverage and cash flow from tenants. J.P. Morgan's estate held significant property assets that continued generating rents even as equities collapsed 89% from their 1929 peak. Andrew Mellon maintained income-producing real estate holdings through the Depression's worst years. In Soviet Russia's dissolution in 1991 and 1992, early privatizations created a specific dynamic. Those who understood the value of commercial real estate in Moscow and St. Petersburg and moved to acquire it through voucher privatization were positioned for extraordinary returns in the decade that followed. The pattern is the same. The structural advantage is dual. Real estate is both an asset and a cash flow engine, and cash flow in a collapsing system is oxygen. Verdict: when the currency collapses, people still need roofs. The landlord survives because the human need for shelter does not appear on a central bank's balance sheet. Essential business ownership, the third asset, requires the most nuanced examination because not all businesses survive collapse. The critical qualifier is essential. Businesses selling luxury goods or discretionary services collapse with consumer spending. Businesses providing food, basic pharmaceuticals, fuel, hardware, and telecommunications enter a collapse in a structurally advantaged position. During Venezuela's ongoing collapse, which accelerated around 2016, businesses operating in the food import and distribution chain effectively became the most valuable enterprises in the country. Empresas Polar, Venezuela's largest food and beverage producer, became so systemically critical that the Maduro government, despite nationalizing large portions of the economy, could not afford to fully destroy it, even while targeting its founder. The owners of essential distribution networks held a form of leverage that transcending political risk. In Zimbabwe, the handful of foreign currency earning exporters, tobacco, gold mining, select agricultural processors, continued paying wages in rand or dollars while the broader economy disintegrated around them. John D. Rockefeller built Standard Oil's dominance precisely during the economic volatility of the 1870s and 1880s, a period punctuated by panics and contractions, because oil had moved from discretionary to essential faster than the market had priced. He accumulated market share when competitors were distressed. The pattern is the same. The structural advantage is dual. Real estate is both an asset and a cash flow engine, and cash flow in a collapsing system is oxygen. Verdict: when the currency collapses, people still need roofs. The landlord survives because the human need for shelter does not